Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 526. Unfortunately, my co-host, Adrian, has not been able to be with us today. He's absconded, the rascal. But I've got a great guest, folks. I've got Cindy back. She's come back from her journey. So, Cindy Nicholson, would you like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Hello, Jonathan. It is good to see you again. And hello to your listeners. It's been a while. So I was a former co-host with Jonathan about a year ago, and I gave up my duties so that I could take a trip around the world with my family. But before I did that, and I currently do now, is I help online entrepreneurs who want to create online courses and create online courses. So I was working, I started out as a high school teacher and a corporate trainer, and I discovered this wonderful world of the online and thought I would build a business in nutrition. And while I was doing that, I, of course, started taking a bunch of online courses. And as a former teacher who kind of did that for a living, I really struggled with the quality of the courses. And I just wasn't getting the value out of them. So I thought, well, maybe I can help entrepreneurs who really have a good message to share, create a course that really resonates with their students. So that's why I, did a pivot. I got out of the nutrition side and then started building a business to help entrepreneurs create online courses. Because it's easier said than done in terms of building something that makes sense, gets a real transformation for your students, and it's quality so that you create people, raving fans, right? So they'll come back for more. So that's been my journey so far.
That's great. We're going to, like Cindy said, she is the course whisperer. So we're going to be talking about getting all your bells and whistles done before you delve into the technology part, which is what WP-Tonic deals with. You should have all your courses outlined, and Cindy's going to give us all the info that you would want, and she's got plenty of additional info on her website. Before we go into the main part of the show, I want to talk about one of our main sponsors. That's Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta only specialise in WordPress hosting. They've been my major hosting for over 2 years now, and their sponsorship is most welcome. So what do you get from Kinsta, or what would your clients get from Kinsta? Well, if you've got a WooCommerce, you've got a learning management system, you've got anything that needs more oomph to get it in front of your clients or customers, you should look at Kinsta. They use Google Cloud technology, so the actual backbone is superb. You get a fantastic interface. You get all the bells and whistles, like the most modern version of PHP. Get great support as well. Everything you're looking for from a premier WordPress hosting provider, you get from Kinsta at a very reasonable price. So if that sounds interesting for yourself or your clients, go over to Kinsta and sign up, and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So Cindy, I've got to ask you this before we go into the main topic of the show. Is now you went on this world journey to get away from me, Cindy. Your mental health was deteriorating, and your husband done an intervention and said you've got to get away. So I totally understood why you had to get away from me, Cindy. But on your travels, is there any one particular country, city that really sticks in your mind that was a big surprise, a big pleasant surprise for you?
So we traveled to probably 12 different countries. We had to cut it short because of the coronavirus. So we missed visiting some of South America, but we did do a lot of Asia and New Zealand, Australia, India, and then some parts of Africa. So we did get a really good taste of what the world is like outside of North America. And it was truly an eye-opener. Some of my favorite places were both Japan and Vietnam and Thailand. I loved how easy it was to travel and to get around. So it's really convenient from a traveler's perspective. And then I loved Vietnam and Thailand in terms of how cheap it was to travel. So you could get by with very little. I had, my 2 boys with me. So, everything adds up, especially if you're traveling for 8 months. So I think my favorite was, Southeast Asia and Vietnam and Thailand. And just really the opportunity to just see how different people live. We had done some pretty conservative traveling up until then. We'd been to Europe and, we've traveled quite a bit in the US, but, nothing can really prepare you to go to places like that just to see how differently people live. So it was truly an extraordinary experience from that perspective.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I have a lot of people that work in Vietnam and Thailand, but I've got a few people that I know that work in Vietnam and they've been very happy there. They say that the people are very welcoming, very hardworking, and really the country deserves a break, really, for, it had a period of over 50 years that were really quite awful. So it's great to hear that Vietnam is really growing and prospering, really, isn't it, Cindy?
Yeah, and they just get by with, they don't have to have a lot of stuff to be happy. And I think that's one of the biggest messages. We came home and had to unpack all of our stuff. And I just kind of was like, we just don't need all of this. You saw so many people living around the world with so little, and yet they were still so happy and welcoming and, proud of where they lived. It was quite an eye-opener for sure.
So on to the main topic. So like I say, you're the course whisperer. Got any tips or insights to start this conversation off with? Because producing content and really, so let's give you a more simpler question. If you're doing your first course, what are your recommendations in how many lessons should be in that course? And B, what is a realistic timeline to get a reasonable quality, your first course up, getting all the materials done and finished and ready to go into whatever online platform you're going to use?
Yeah. Okay, so that is a bit of a loaded question, Jonathan. You haven't changed a bit. Anyway, so in terms of how long should a course be? Well, that's a really tough question to answer because it depends on what you're teaching them. What is the outcome that you're looking to get your students to learn? I would recommend, if this is your first stab at taking a course, keep it simple. So maybe you start with maybe a free course that you're teaching, or really understand what a particular pain point that your clients or your students or your audience is having. Figure out what that specific pain point is that they're struggling with and put something together for them. Now, so I would say, because I like to keep my lessons short, I will always recommend keep it simple and keep it short. So whatever lesson that you're teaching, have just one teaching point within that lesson. Allow them to master that particular milestone before you move on to the next, outcome that you're looking for. So when you look at whatever you're trying to teach them, this is what I, recommend to my clients is, brainstorm. Identify what it is you want them to overcome, what challenge they're having. Identify what that is, and then brainstorm all of the things that they need to be able to do in order to achieve that milestone. And those are going to be all of your individual lessons. So I usually have the clients that I work with, they're generally doing bigger courses. So I would say never more than 5 modules with 5 lessons in them is kind of what I like to say in terms of creating a course. And for each lesson, so if you're creating a lesson, which is part of your overall course. This is to answer your second question about how long should it take you to create it. I usually like to give the ballpark of about 5 hours per lesson that you teach. So even though your lesson is going to be, you know, if it's a video, even if it's going to be 5 to 10 minutes long, all of the elements that go around it will take about 5 hours. So that's what I'd like to give people the ballpark. And granted, you can do it shorter than that if you want to. Like people can just, you can bang off a 10-minute video and be fine with it if that's what your priority is. I really look for quality courses. So, you know, you've got your lesson that you're teaching, you want to, you know, do your research, you want to do your recording, you want to do your editing, you want to create your whatever worksheets or, you know, handouts that you want to give them. So I usually say ballpark around 5 hours for each lesson that you teach. That's usually takes me now between 4 and 5 hours to do it. So that's usually what I recommend for new people as well.
All right. So you said, you know, before you started the Course Whisperer, you did a few courses yourself and you weren't happy. So what are some of the basic mistakes that you often see people making, Cindy?
Oh, I have spent thousands of dollars on courses. And I would say 90% of them I have not finished. And I think that's the real risk we face right now, is just so many people are putting courses out right now that are not high quality, that people are getting discouraged with taking online courses. So biggest mistake is that they're trying to cover too much information. That's hands down the biggest mistake that people are doing, is they have 45-minute lessons, 1-hour lessons where they just ramble on and, you know, share really interesting information and, you know, information that is helpful, but not necessarily relevant or pertinent to that particular lesson learner. So that is probably the biggest mistake, is that they just talk at the screen, but don't share any, don't tailor it to be a teaching lesson. So that's probably number one. And then the number two is just because you have said it doesn't mean your students have learned it. And what I mean by that is often it'll be a video and then it's like, okay, go on to the next video and learn the next thing. And then it's okay, watch the next video. What I find in a lot of courses is they don't have, you know, after that 5 to 10 minute lesson, I always recommend that you have some sort of action item. So get them to do something to apply or internalize the content that they have just used. And so those are the two mistakes I see. Number one is they ramble on for too long. They don't get to the point. And then the second one is that they just have them go on to the next lesson. There has been no learning taken place. They may have found it interesting or insightful, but they haven't actually learned. So what I often see is there's no action items or follow-up or worksheets or, you know, application exercises after each of the lessons. So those are kind of the two main ones. And I'll say a third one is, because I obviously just always comes up as well, is the courses tend to be too broad. You know, they haven't really narrowed down or honed in on who the course is for, because they're worried about excluding too many people. So they keep the topic too broad. And so therefore, a lot of the content that's in the course doesn't apply for a good chunk of the people that are taking the course. And so as a result, as a student, if there's so much information in the course that I don't really need or doesn't apply to me, I don't end up finishing the course. And that's probably where, you know, when I talk about a high percentage of courses I haven't completed, is because there's so much content in there that doesn't apply to me that I don't want to waste my time going through these 45-minute lessons to pick out maybe the 1 or 2 salient points that you know, resonate with me. So there's my three biggest things that I would say I see with online courses these days that I find very difficult to get through.
That's great. We're going to go for our break. When we're coming back, we'll be delving more in this world of getting your course up to standard, which you'll be proud of. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. I've got an old friend back on the show, one of my old co-hosts. She looks very relaxed. It's probably not been my co-host anymore that's done that. Totally understandable. Before we go any further in the second half of the show, I want to talk about one of our other great sponsors, and that's WP Fusion. Now, if you've got a customer relation manager like Active Campaign, Drip, there's a lot of them out there. Groundhog. If you've got one of those and you've got your WordPress website, you need WP Fusion, because it's going to make how your WordPress website communicate with your marketing automation platform so much more easier and more powerful. I'm not going to go into everything it can do because it's just mind-blowing, basically. And we've been using it for our clients for the past year, and we've built some fantastic automation with WordPress, with WP Fusion, and then with Active Campaign and all the other ones I've just named. So go over to WP Fusion, see what they can do for you and for your clients, and you're going to be blown away. Buy one of their packages and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So, Cindy, before we went for a break, we were quickly discussing some of the problems you regularly see. Are there any people that are regularly producing courses that you think are doing a really fantastic job? Are there that come to mind that you might be able to refer the listeners and viewers to, that they might be able to adapt some of the things they see? Any course producers that come to mind?
Well, it's interesting when I say a large percentage of courses that I haven't finished. The one that really sticks out for me, her name's Jenny Shih, so S-H-I-H, and she has a course called Make It Work Online that I took probably maybe 4 years ago. But it's interesting because, you talk about creating these courses so that people will learn something, but also in terms of being really specific as to who your audience is, but it also helps from a marketing perspective. And I'll just tell this story because it really hit it home for me. At this time when I was taking a lot of courses and getting really discouraged with the quality of the courses, I had begged off and said, okay, I'm not taking any more online courses because I keep getting burned. Because these people, they have amazing marketing, so they suck you in to get you to buy the course, and then you get in there and the quality isn't there. So I had just begged off. I'm not taking any more courses. And so, of course, I get an email from Jenny Shih, and it's one of her marketing emails. And, I still read the emails because I'm quite interested about marketing online. And so I read through her email just for interest's sake, not like I was interested in taking this course. And I read through it. And by the end of her email, I decided to look in more whether or not I should take her course. And one of the key things about her course is she was super, super specific as to who the course was for. So she identified how much income you probably you should have made. She identified how many clients that you would have worked with that would be ideal for this course. She identified, what stage you are at in terms of creating your website, in terms of, your marketing material. So she clearly outlined who the course was for, such that by the time I got to the end of her email, I'm like, oh my gosh, this course is exactly for me, because she's identified exactly who I am. So, of course, I decided to sign up for her course. And it was the only course that I've gotten all the way through, because she was so clear on who her audience was, that all of the content that was in it was, you know, directed to me. There wasn't any stuff that was either above or below, you know, where I was at in my business. So all of the content was directly applicable, but she also had these short videos that, you know, she really hit on a particular target each week or a particular outcome. So she had short videos, and then she also had action items. So after every video, we had to do something, so that by the end, we were always working on our business. So that course really stuck out for me in terms of being kind of having all of the elements that I think that you need to have a really good quality course. And it helped her marketing, because it really kind of spoke and identified to me, but also helped me get through her course. And here I am talking about it, right? Like, you know, if you create something of quality that people get real value from, they have no problem talking about it to other people. So I think that that's one of the other main reasons why it's important to create something of quality, rather than just, you know, record for 45 minutes and call it a course kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Cindy, because a lot of the people I talk to, they tend to mix quality and value up. So they see offering quality, that they're going to offer more videos, more lessons, more of everything, and by that it has to slightly get less focused, and especially when it's your first course. Now, how do you see the value of getting your first actual live users and then actually getting input from that first batch of users? How important is that in making your course better, your first course better, or your second course better?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because I find that people, when they're wanting to create a course for the first time, they'll come to me and be like, I want to create a course on this. What do you think? And I'd be like, I have no idea. I am not your target client. I have no idea if that is something that would resonate. What does your audience say? And that's when I kind of get the blank look, that they don't know. So number one, you want to have at least worked with clients for a little bit, so do you understand what kind of challenges they're having. But number two, before you create that course, you have to find out, you have to ask your audience what's going on and what they're struggling with. It's so important, because what you may think the problem is may not be what they perceive the problem is. And so that it's so, you could go down a path. If you don't find out at the beginning, you could go down this path and spend hours creating something, and then it doesn't hit the mark. And, you know, so when I came back from our trip, because up until this point, I've worked one-on-one with clients. Before I came home, I worked one-on-one with clients, helped them build their courses and everything like that. I hadn't actually created a course about how to create an online course yet. But when I came home, I was getting a lot, you know, given the environments, you know, people being at home and everything, I was getting a lot of people interested in my services. And so I thought, well, now's a perfect time to create my own online course. And so what I actually did is because I had taken a break from work for 8 months, I hadn't really worked with my audience or anything. I reached out to a partnership that I had, who he kind of has the Udemy. He has a platform that's like Udemy, but for non-profit companies. Anyway, so he hosts this kind of Udemy type site. Anyway, I reached out to him because we have, you know, very similar target clients. And I said, you know, would any of your students or would any of your clients be interested in, you know, taking an online course about how to create online courses? So what I would recommend is, if you don't have your own audience to reach out and ask questions to, that would be the first thing, is reach out to your own audience to find out what they're struggling with. The second thing would be go online and see what people are talking about. Or the third one is to find a synergistic relationship with somebody who has a similar target market and find out how you can support them. And so what I ended up doing was I created a webinar for his audience. And at the end of the webinar, I offered a beta launch of my online course to create an online course. And that was super valuable. Like I don't think I realized until I went through it myself, the value of not finding out the information before you create the course, but B, do a beta launch as you're creating it. And what I mean by that is have students go through the course as you are creating it.
It's amazed how experienced you are. You know, somebody like yourself, you know, you've helped people, you spent many hours studying, you know, your subject, but it's still amazing how having other eyes going through something, because it's well known in web design that after you've looked at a website so many hours, you don't see the obvious. You become blind. So it's always a good idea to have some people that haven't looked at the website, that's part of your friends, or don't matter who it is, but get some eyes on it that haven't seen it before. And I think the same applies to a course, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it was super valuable because, you know, what I thought some students might have difficulty with, I realized it was actually pretty easy. And then they had questions with things that I hadn't spent enough time on. It's that whole curse of knowledge, right? You know the content so well, it's sometimes difficult for you to kind of put yourself in a new learner's shoes. But the other value I found with creating the beta course or doing the beta launch was it really forced me to get the course done because I was committed, right? I had a group of people that were interested in taking this course and I had no content created. So every week I would launch, you know, my next module, and I had better get it done.
Funny how that motivates you, isn't it?
It worked wonders, because I tell you, when I came back, you know, from our trip, I certainly wouldn't have created an online course on my own volition. But once I had that beta group of students taking the course, I got her done. And it helps you because so many people, when they're creating the course, they get hung up on making decisions, right? You probably see it with, you know, people trying to decide on a platform or whatever. And you just get hung up on the smallest things, usually because there's some other underlying thing holding you back, but you're finding all these other reasons to not do the work. But a beta launch of a course is certainly a way for you to overcome all of those issues that you have, because you just don't have time. You just make a decision, go on, and, you know, you always have the opportunity to go back and fix it. That's the beauty of the internet, right? Everything is changeable. So just get her done, get it out there, get people experiencing it, and see how it lands. And then you can always go back and change it or create another course or something like that.
That's great. Well, we're coming to the end of the podcast. Hopefully Cindy's going to stay on for some bonus content. Are you up for that, Cindy?
I'm up for it, Jonathan.
No, that's great. I'm going to be asking Cindy about having courses in more than 2 languages, because I've had a lot of people approach me about that. The difficulties and also the benefits of having a multilingual course base. I'm also going to be talking to her about any resources about the science of building effective courses. Are there any online resources that she knows? So we'll be covering some interesting stuff. Now, if you want to watch this bonus content and the whole interview, the easiest thing is to go to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel, because that's where I place the interview with the bonus content the quickest on. And just go to WP-Tonic, just search in YouTube, WP-Tonic. We've got over 500 interviews on the channel, and you just subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified when I put a new video on. And just finally, me and my co-host Adrian, the founder of Groundhog, are going to be doing a joint free webinar on September the 1st. So that's Tuesday, September the 1st at 9 a.m. And we'll be covering how to utilize marketing automation on a course website and the most effective ways of using marketing automation to reduce people dropping out of your course. It's going to be a totally free webinar. You're going to learn something fantastic from it. How do you register? You just go to the WP-Tonic website. On the top navigation, there's a button that says free webinar. Click it and you'll be able to register and you'll be able to join us. And that's at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesday, the 1st of September. So, Cindy, what's the best ways to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Sure. Well, you can come visit me at thecoursewhisperer.co. That's where I have, I've got my online course there now, but also in terms of reaching out to me, you can contact me from there. So thank you very much, Jonathan.
Right, that's great. So we'll see you next week, folks, hopefully with my co-host, Adrian, and we'll have another fantastic guest like Cindy, and we give you some quick tips, insights about a subject that relates to you. We will see you next week, folks. Bye. So, Cindy, like I said in the podcast part of the show, I've had quite a few people, about 3 or 4 people over the past 6 months. 2 of them actually became clients where they were looking for a bilingual solution. So they were basically, both of them were looking for English and Spanish. Now, are there any particular, I don't know if you've been involved in a bilingual course, because it's bad enough trying to do it in English when it's your first course. So first of all, have you taken one of those? And secondly, have you got any kind of insights?
Well, it's interesting because I hadn't worked with anyone who, like, you're talking about creating a course that is in more than one language.
Yeah, English, right? Be available in English and Spanish.
Yeah, well, I haven't actually worked with anybody who has done that, other than just since I've been back. I've had a client who is this woman. She lives in Spain. She's from the US, and most of her client work was in China. So she was traveling to China all the time to do leadership coaching. Anyway, as you can imagine,
sounds a busy lady.
Yeah, as you can imagine, everything dried up in terms of her business. So all of her clients canceled on her. So she started now to create her own online course on leadership. We were just talking a couple weeks ago about, whether or not it makes sense for her to also build the content in Spanish. And because, she's bilingual, and I couldn't see a reason why it wouldn't work. If you're doing all of this work with the English side, if you can just as easily then translate that into another language, I can't see any downside to that at all. I mean, other than you now are dividing your target client to some extent. So from a marketing perspective, it would be potentially more challenging because you're dividing up your focus. But the content itself, I would only anticipate that being a good thing.
Yeah, I think, obviously you got the only drawback is, obviously cost, time, resources. Obviously producing your first course is going to be an interesting process. Like anything you do for the first time, it's going to probably be more difficult, cost you more money and cost you more time than you think. And if you don't think that, either you're a very optimistic person or you haven't learned anything from your life. But the thing is, it's just going to require more resources, more money, more time, basically. But I do agree with you. So let's get on to the other part that I said I was going to be asking you in the bonus content. I think I totally agree with you. Break things, look for easy things to get early successes, break it down to smaller bits. Make sure that you got quizzes and other things that the student body's got to do after they look at a video. But what's the science? Is there a lot of practical science, educational science behind this, Cindy? And if is there any kind of resources that people could go to online that will give them some insights into the major things that you were talking about in the podcast part of the show?
Well, it's interesting because I guess I base my work that I do based on my experiences, from teaching and being in the corporate world, training, as opposed to basing it on any specific science per se. I just think about how, I look at my children, I look about how I learn, I look how other people learn. So in terms of, watching a video is just not enough for people to learn and apply. Most online courses that entrepreneurs are creating, they are trying to teach some sort of skill, right? Learning how to do something. They may create online courses to teach some information, but most of the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, they're trying to teach a skill. And if you're learning to do a skill, you have to practice. It doesn't matter what it is. You have
it's a bit like learning, let's say you were trying to learn PHP, which is still the framework of WordPress. And I have gone through training courses. I'm not an active developer anymore. I've got people to do that for me. But when I remember when I was trying to learn PHP, I'm a very visual person. So online courses or videos or YouTube, I just kind of absorbed every free resource that I could get my hands on through YouTube. And then Udemy, I did some free courses through that, and then I forgot the gentleman, and then I think I went to Morton Hangdonson, who was a friend of mine, and he was on lynda.com, and I found his course, and I was a member of lynda.com anyway, and I learned he was doing some specific courses with PHP, with WordPress, and I just had my full concentration on his courses. And he's a very good instructor. He's a natural at it, and he's just a great guy in general. But I just got totally absorbed in, and he provided some good resources. But like what you said, I tend just to watch initially just to get some insight in the vocabulary and the tools necessary. But without practice of, you can't just watch a load of PHP videos and then become a PHP developer. You actually have to spend a lot of hours actually building stuff and learning the logic behind coding. And I think that applies to everything. Do you?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, it's a skill. So imagine watching a video about how to ride a bicycle and then expecting to be able to go and hop on a bike and ride away. Intellectually, it might all make sense about how to do it, but until you actually experience it, you don't know what you don't know. And, when you talk about the bicycle, it's that's obvious, that's a physical skill, but any other skills, the same premise applies in terms of you have to practice it until you figure it out. It might make sense, so you may say that you've learned it, but you now need the next step, which is how do you apply it? How do you translate that information into your real world so that you can do something with it, which is what most people are taking online courses for. They're wanting to learn how to do something. and they come to you to take your course, to give them the shortcut, because as you say, a lot of information can be found out online. They're looking for the shortcut to do it in the simplest way. So you want to break it down step by step in order for them to be able to do that on their own, because they're just some person in their room trying to learn from the computer. So that's why it's so important to keep it simple and keep it streamlined, so that they can take those bits of information and internalize it, because they got a whole lot of other stuff going on.
Would I be correct to say, obviously online courses have obviously in the mid 2000s, I think it started because broadband had expanded, and I think in the past 10 years. But would I be correct to say that the actual science, the actual way of learning online, we're still in the very early days of actually knowing what works, what doesn't work?
I think you have, I don't think we figured it out, ideally. I think what we've tried to do is take our classroom experience, where the teacher's at the front of the room rambling on, and we've tried to just translate that onto the computer. And we haven't revolutionized online learning. There's so many industries that have been revolutionized with the internet. You just have to look at Uber, you just have to look at music. There's so many industries that have been completely revolutionized, and learning is still kind of plodding along. And as you say, like, I don't know if we know what the best approach is, other than you gotta break it down for them.
Now, just to finish off, because obviously you need to get on with helping people with their courses. So maybe another 5 minutes and we call it a day, Cindy. But it's been a pleasure having you back on the show. You must return. Do we actually have any insights about how people actually learn? Is it through repetition? Is repetition a key part of it? But there's been instances in my own life. I suffer from I hate the word. I haven't found a appropriate word to replace it, but I hate saying I suffer from dyslexia, because I don't exactly see it that way, but I keep using that term because I haven't found a short enough term to replace it, actually, Cindy. But there's been instances linked to my dyslexia. I could repeat a word 1,000 times, but I would still keep on misspelling it. So repetition, but maybe that's linked to my dyslexia. But is repetition, I don't think repetition on its own will mean that you'll learn something, will it? You need some other intervention linked to repetition. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I think that repetition doesn't hurt, but in isolation, it doesn't necessarily mean that learning is taking place. Usually, if my students are creating content and they're trying to think about what kind of activity they should do at the end of their lesson, because I'm talking about, create some sort of activity. If they're asking, well, what should I do? I usually ask them, what kind of information are you teaching them? If it's something that they need to know top of mind, like something that they have to, somebody asks them, they know the answer right away, that's when repetition works best, so that they are internalizing that information through repeating it over and over again. So if it is some sort of quiz or something where they're kind of repeating that information over and over again to help internalize it, because it's something they need to know off the top of their head, that is kind of the appropriate activity. If it's a skill that they want to learn, in that particular lesson, then it's about giving them as close to real life experience as possible. So give them a case study that they have to kind of work their way through. Give them scenarios that they need to kind of apply and think about. So more deeper reflection or application is I think what will help with learning a particular skill. So yes, it's repetition, but it's also making it real life that I think makes it important, not in kind of your own little bubble where you repeat it over and over again.
Yes, I understand. Now, to finish off, also, I think there's been a lot of research that you can divide adults or children into different learning styles. Like I say, I'll just give you an outline of my learning style. When I'm trying to learn something new, I'm a visual person. I think that's down to my dyslexia. Auditory, I listen to things. I've always been a great radio listener. And I like watching videos, right? But I tend, what I like to do is get as much info about the subject as possible. I like to watch some videos. I like to listen to some stuff, read some stuff, get a broad idea on the subject before I delve into actually trying to do practical stuff on the keyboard or whatever it is. I'm kind of applying it when I was trying to learn coding. But I've also applied that to other things as well. I kind of investigate. I'm not one of those that delves in straight away. I like to get a picture. But I know other people, they just dive in straight away. They hit the keyboard and they learn by mistake. Is my learning style unusual, or is that pretty typical of the different styles? You've got those that just jump straight in and others that investigate.
Yeah, I think there's both. And I think that that's where the challenge is when it comes to creating online courses, is trying to accommodate for all of the different learning styles. And, you know, I think there's a preference of the way people like to learn, but it may or may not necessarily be the best way that they learn. So I think, and there's a lot of, in terms of the studies about the different types of learners, I think we just have to accommodate it all. So, you know, with what you're talking about, and online courses, you can have videos, you can have worksheets and applications, you can provide transcripts, you can provide references, so people who want to know more information before they go on, you can refer them to somewhere else. So you can include all of those elements in your course to accommodate all of the different learning styles. That being said, I still recommend having quite a streamlined course, but providing those resources around it for, you know, learners like you that need just a bit more before they move forward. So yeah, you can do it with online courses in terms of accommodating all of those different types of learners. And the people who buy your course probably might already have an idea of what your style is, of how you communicate. And so probably they're buying your course because they like the way that you communicate or teach already. So you don't necessarily have to worry about being somebody who you're not in terms of how you teach your material.
Well, Cindy, I think we've achieved what I hoped we were going to achieve in this interview. I think we've gone over quite a bit of territory, but I think we've given some insights into some of the challenges people will face in building effective courses. And it's there's a fair bit more into it. And I think we've explained why, looking back at all the things we've covered in the past 45 minutes, why a lot of courses fail, because I don't think they appreciate some of the factors that they're going to be dealing with. Are they, Cindy?
Yeah, well, they often think that they know the content, so they know how to teach it. And it's a little bit more of an art and science than just that. So.
All right, that's great. We're going to see you next week when we hopefully have a similar great guest like Cindy. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.